So I think it's pretty safe to say that my garden season didn't go exactly how I thought it was going to. To cut a very, very long story short, at the end of last year, I got tonsillitis quite a few times, and now I've had them out. And so the entire growing season was pretty much taken up by me being sick or recovering from being sick or about to get sick. On top of which, realizing the flaws in the garden plan as they were arising. We had a few stretches of over 45-degree days here, including over a week straight of about 45 degrees. And that doesn't make for a great garden. Coupled with the fact that I was not well and I don't have an automated watering system makes for extra dead plants. Figuring out as well, we realized during the heat of the summer that there's no real shade in our yard or our garden at all. So any shade that comes from trees is from trees over the fence. So they're not really within our control. If someone wanted to cut them down, they can, but they're also just not in areas we would sit and use. The automated watering is a big one, as is the lack of shade, and any kind of tree whatsoever. Anything really in the ground really struggled this year. This will be the bane of my existence pretty much as long as I am here, I think. But the landscaping that was done here was done to a budget and not properly. It's completely fine if you want to do things to a budget, but you do need to do them properly. So there are a lot of baseline foundational problems that I thought we could manage and we really needed to rip out. For context, I'm in Northern Victoria. We are on an entire slab of clay here, which is why we flood so frequently. And really hard, dry, compacted clay that has not been treated, that has not been cared for in any way, is not the ideal growing conditions for much. Nothing can get really established. Even when I dug out an entire trench to put in watermelons and pumpkins, which are pretty prolific growers around here, they just didn't take. All of which to say, we're starting again. So what I've already done and not filmed is I've removed all of the cow manure, compost, hay, whatever that was in the raised garden beds that I had, and I have laid that out along the outside where my garden beds were. This will help over time improve the soil as it goes. It will help build soil fertility, but unfortunately it is going to take time. I went and hired a tilling machine and I just watched it bounce off the clay. So tilling is not really an option either unless I want to hack at it with a mattock for about hours on end. So that one's not really like a now fix. I think it's just going to be a teaching Nicole patience trick, which is what I'm really enjoying. But there is a lot of cow manure, there's a lot of fertilizer, there's a lot of gypsum to try and break down and help build that soil fertility over time. I don't want to be waiting as long as I am going to have to, but it is what we are given. We've also made plans to add a pergola to our outdoor area because the baking heat that the paved bricks, whatever, the heat that it bounces into the house makes the whole house heat up, and it would be so much easier if we had shade. So we're building a pergola, but that is kind of ongoing. So all of the cow manure and compost is out of the raised beds. So the raised beds are empty. They are going to be moved into place, but I am going to do an oil treatment on all of the wood to try and condition the wood and help it last longer. I'm also planning to repaint some of the beds to make them all kind of uniform in that Monument Colorbond color, hashtag not sponsored, just so they all look sleeker and the yard kind of has a bit of cohesion about it and it doesn't look a bit haphazard. We're also going to be moving the chickens from where they were to what will be protected by the pergola a little bit more. So the two tall raised beds that I'm going to put in are going to stay at the side of the yard that they are. They're just going to be spread out a little more, and I'll put trees in between so we can add some fruit trees to the yard, which I'm really excited about. So all is not lost. The first season in this house, in this yard, in this garden was a learning experience. We got to learn about where the heat kind of sits in the yard, where the problem areas are. The lawn is basically a write-off at this stage. Again, what the previous owners did was get turf and slap it down over the existing lawn, which has created this like shelf because the slab was not big enough for the entire yard. I think they were hoping that it would spread, but it just hasn't materialized that way. So at this stage, I think the plan for the lawn is that we'll just scarify and do some treatments and rip some things to level it in the spring and then reseed. Because currently the only thing that's really thriving in any cohesive way are weeds. So I think it's better if we just start fresh. Additionally, I fixed up the rockery area last year, and that was one thing that has done really, really well. It's brought a lot of bees and beneficial insects into the yard, which is a huge achievement because this yard, this time last year, didn't really have much in the way of insects. This place was genuinely sprayed within an inch of its life, so there was not a lot of good or bad bugs anywhere to be seen. So the fact that we've got bees and some native bees as well, we've seen a lot of blue banded bees come through for the salvias, was a huge win. Unfortunately, that is where the poles for the pergola are going to go, and they are going to be in the shade. They're not going to thrive. I am going to find a new spot for them. So our current to-do list is building the pergola is our first priority because it is going to take the most amount of time. It isn't that time sensitive necessarily because it's really only impacting the heat in the house in summer. But spring and summer gardens are built in autumn and winter, and we are halfway through March now, just over halfway through March, which in this part of the world is autumn. So planning for that going forward, no worries. The second thing is building soil fertility. That is a really high priority for me. It is going to take time. It is not going to be an instant fix as much as I would like it to be. It's just not going to be a quick fix. There are no instant gratification with soil building, so I just kind of have to wear that. The third is the placement of trees and my garden beds. So I do have a vague plan of where everything is going to go. I'm terrible at drawing, otherwise I would put up a general sketch of how it's going to look. But the plan is to plant my pomegranate tree that is in a pot at one end, a fig tree at the other, and potentially a lemon in the middle. I'm still tossing up between my Maya lemon that's currently in a pot or getting a cherry tree or a dwarf peach or something like that and tossing it up. So the middle one is a bit in flux. Between all those trees, I'm going to put the tall raised garden beds, and around the corner from the fig will be the two lower raised beds. And further down that side of the garden bed will be the chickens. They will be protected from the heat, they'll be protected from the cold, they'll be protected from the sun, the rain, everything, they'll be fine in there. And third priority, which should really be higher, but I can't really do it until anything else is in place, is irrigation. I'm going to set up on the garden beds a map out grid so everything waters. You can just plug a hose in and set it, forget it to be done, so I don't have to spend so much time and energy hand watering, especially if I get sick. Also on my priority list, although it's not like really, really high, is I'm going to put my sub-pod worm farm under the ground rather than in a raised bed. I'm getting other worm farm facilities for the raised beds. The really tall raised beds, I'm putting in some PVC pipe, and I know PVC is not necessarily ideal because plastics and whatever, but trying to find something that tall for the beds are about a meter tall. I think they're about my hip height, so that probably, it's probably about a meter, just over. Trying to find something that tall where the worms can get right down to the bottom, I think PVC is the best way I can possibly go. So I've got PVC worm towers for the tall raised beds. I've found some Backyard Farmer terracotta worm farms for the smaller raised beds because they won't have to go as deeply. But I did find when I was scooping out the soil from all the raised beds, the bed with the sub pod had far and away the best soil. So I think it is a worthwhile venture putting worm farms in each of the beds individually. Do we necessarily have the scraps for it? No, but I will be able to sort it out. So if we're putting them in columns, these are my structural goals and the development goals. I'm really trying to buy less firsthand in the garden at the minute, trying to reduce my plastic consumption in the garden, and I'm also trying to reduce my buying things firsthand. If I can buy something secondhand, I will. Sometimes there is an option, but it's just like a little personal goal, trying to buy less firsthand. I don't really buy that much firsthand, but just mindful consumption. So I think that pretty much covers everything. My indoor plants are ticking along, and quite frankly, I need to downsize this collection because we are running out of shelves. And I should really make a video on my indoor plants because they are so easy for me, and I know they're not easy for everyone, but they're just the easiest things in the world for me. But yeah, just a little explanation as to where I've been. I have been sick. Now I'm gonna go out into the garden. Bye!